Hey guys, welcome back to the Virgo Girl channel. I am really here to talk about this series, documentary style series on Mike Tyson, because I feel like it's really kind of raw and they kind of go there. And I really like that about this. But before we dive deep into this, don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe. It means so much to me and it does help the growth of my channel. All right, so getting right into it with this whole Mike Tyson thing, I read somewhere that Mike Tyson wasn't necessarily, I guess, happy with this, series, which, is unfortunate. But I must say, a lot of the times with documentaries, I kind of prefer the ones that aren't like quote unquote approved by the person, because it's almost like you get more of the grit and the dirt, and it's not like all sugar coated and all the good stuff is taken out because people don't want you to know what really happened. For me, for if it's a documentary, I don't even want to watch it if it's just something where you guys are just giving surface and you're leaving out all the good stuff. That's the whole point of documentaries. It's like you want to know what happened, like for real. And now, and on the other side, I do know that sometimes people don't approve of documentaries because they feel like, well, this is not an accurate portrayal of me. Now, if that's the case, then I can totally understand if someone is just saying things that aren't true. That's one thing. But if you're upset because the truth is coming out, it is the truth, but you just don't like the way it makes you look, then that's like a totally different thing. But at any rate, on this documentary, geez, it's a lot. Okay, first of all, it's a lot. And I would be curious to know how much of this is really real and how much of it is just kind of like Hollywood and, I guess embellished or what have you. Because, and I'm sure with any documentary, there are things that are not to the point. That's why they say like based on a true story or based on actual events, because nothing is going to be 100% on these things. But yeah, on this one, the things that, okay, let's get into it. Okay, so with this documentary, it starts off with his mom, and there's a lot of things when it comes to his mom that are a bit concerning. And like, I'm just curious to know in that dynamic, like how much of that was real, because that was a lot. With the mom. I mean, they went through a lot. It was even one point where they were like homeless, like they were like outside, living outside, and they lived in, I believe he said Brownsville, New York, which was like a rough part of New York. And just imagine they were like outside. And this was taking place back in the 80s where, crime was like really rampant and all of that. So he went through a lot, like just in his neighborhood and alone like that. So they started out with like when he was a kid, and he definitely went through a lot. He definitely wasn't the tough guy that he became all back then. It showed like his like vulnerable side when he was like a younger kid, and actually when some of the students were actually picking on him, and teasing him and just doing things to him that weren't good in school, and he wasn't even like really defending himself. And it's funny how like he started out like that, but he ended up being this great boxer, after all that time in school where he was pretty much getting bullied and things like that. But at any rate, so basically, so you had the childhood. Then the childhood, for me, the childhood is the base. That determines so much of how your life is going to go, how your relationships are going to be, and things like that. And based on his childhood, like the way he was treated, whew, it was a lot. It was a lot. So I'll just let you guys watch that. I don't want to totally spoil it for those of you who haven't seen it, but yeah, pay attention to his childhood, because he went through a lot in that childhood alone, and it was just a lot of weird things. And I don't know. That was just tough. I'm just so curious to know. I would love to know, like, what, was that kind of made up? Did they kind of like, over exaggerate things like for his childhood, or was it really like that? I would be curious to know, because that would explain a lot about him and just how he is. And I'm sure to a certain extent the things they put about his childhood were, were true. But there's just certain little things I would just be curious to know from him, like what really happened. And I know he wrote books. I'm sure he wrote books and things like that. I believe he did write books, but I haven't followed Mike Tyson like that, so I can't say that I read any of his books. But I guess in his books, perhaps he gave those details. I don't know. But moving right along, then they just go there. The point of this recommendation is because it's interesting and because they actually go there. They don't sugarcoat it. They don't leave things out, which I felt was perfect, because people have questions. They dove into the whole thing with Robin Givens. That was his first wife. And I guess back then, now keep in mind, this stuff with Mike Tyson. Yeah, Mike Tyson. It happened before most of you were probably even born or even thought of. I didn't even realize that Mike Tyson was out this long ago, because like his name is still like kind of out, like most people are familiar with Mike Tyson even today. So I didn't realize that he was out back in like the 80s and stuff like that. But at any rate, so he actually was, it touched on the Robin Givens thing, which I love that, because that was something that was a big part of, I guess, him being exposed. She did an interview and kind of like exposed like how volatile the relationship was and just how he was like as a person, like basically calling him out, saying he was, kind of dangerous for the most part. And so I think that like in the series, it just kind of like pointed toward that was the beginning of like his downfall, like when he had all those problems with his wife, and like she came forward and just kind of like told about how he was acting and just how he was, like that was the beginning of things starting to go bad for him. It also touched on his elaborate lifestyle and just how he was spending money like unnecessarily, just spending money, crazy amounts of money on things that were just so elaborate and just so like just over the top. Like there's this one scene where he buys his car, and I don't know if it was a Bentley. I can't remember the kind of car, but first of all, the car was already super expensive, and then he wanted a hot tub put in the car. I mean, come on. That's like crazy. So he wanted, and the guy was like, yeah, I don't think I can put a hot tub in a Bentley or whatever the car was, the guy was saying. First of all, like, why would you do that? Of course, that's going to depreciate the car so much, because who else is, you know what I mean? Just everything about it was just like, what? But keep in mind, this was when he was doing all this, I believe, and at this point he was still like in his early 20s, so he was young. He had never had anything, and he was just, living it up. This was his first time experiencing having money. When he was growing up too, I forgot to mention, I did mention that they were like homeless at one time, but they were also extremely, just throughout the whole time, they make it seem like he was very poor as well. So he wasn't used to having anything. So it makes sense, new money kind of thing. And then also, I forgot to mention, they talk about Cuss, which is the trainer guy who first like discovered him. And well, actually there was another guy that kind of like discovered him first. I can't remember his name, but there's another guy that saw that he was super talented, and that guy kind of told Cuss, hey, you need to look at this kid or whatever. And that's kind of like how he got introduced. But at any rate, so this guy, he was like ended up being like someone that took him in. Like Mike Tyson ended up moving in with this guy and his family, and it showed the dynamic of that. But it was just kind of weird because like this guy, like it's kind of like twofold, okay? So this guy that discovered him, it was like he literally turned Mike into a monster, like, if you will. Like he created this like beast, like he was the one that told Mike to, he just taught him how to be this vicious, you know, and stuff like that in the ring. He was the one that trained him to do this, taught him how to box, taught him what to do. And you know, back then Mike was just knocking people out. Like, I guess like in the first round, you know, he was just knocking people out. He had like this crazy record, you know, of just winning all his fights, no losses and stuff like that. And then they take you to where he ended up with Robin. Well, he ended up getting divorced from Robin Givens. And it just showed him like living like a fast lifestyle, very fast. You know, all the things that are included in a fast lifestyle, like sex, drugs, rock and roll kind of thing. And he had like all these women. Actually, they also were showing that as far as with the women, that was always the case. I mean, ever since he, I mean, he was famous, he always had a lot of, you know, like women around and stuff like that. And it's funny because also I love the part where they talked about how, he talked about how, like, especially like with women, he was honest. I don't know if it was an interview or something he was doing. He said like he was like when it came to women, he was awkward. He didn't really feel like he had game like that. But put $20 million in his hand, you know, he becomes this, or more. I think he was worth way more than that. But, you know, I'm just saying all these millions of dollars later, you know, it's like the money gave him confidence. But, you know, at the end of the day, those insecurities he had, they were still there. But the money just helped him to be more, I guess, confident. And, you know, women were coming to him, like some women. They were fine with, you know, just being his little side piece or whatever. So he had like all these women, you know, and so everything was different for him. He went from no women, no money to having all these women, all this money, all this excess, you know, of things that he never had before. And so that changed his life. I mean, that's drastically. That's him. And he was famous. He was huge. You know, I guess he was like one of the #1 people back then. And then so, what else happened? Oh, okay. And then it also touches on how, hopefully I'm not leaving out any of the key points. I don't want to spoil it for you guys, but it's so good. It pinpoints like his violent side too, like how he gets angry with people. It kind of highlighted that. But at the same time, it showed like his human side. Like it shows him with like his nephew, and you know, it just shows him like it's almost like he wanted someone to love him. But he didn't know how to receive love because of, you know, like everything he had been through. And also, let's see what else. He was troubled. Like there's one part where they talk about like mental health and stuff like that. That part, I'm not sure if they were trying to say, I'm not sure what they were trying to say because it kind of confused me. It's like, did he need, because they showed a part where he had like medication and it's like, well, he was saying that the only reason why he was having these outbreaks is because he was doing like coke and what else did he say? He said drinking and weed and stuff like that. So he was saying basically that those things was what was triggering his, you know, outbursts and his mood swings. It wasn't that it was something wrong with him. It was the substances that was making him, you know, act this way. That was what was said from his point of view, or, you know, in the movie, the guy in the movie who played him, that's what he said. But then somehow he ended up getting on some kind of medication and that like really slowed him down, like with, I guess his boxing. They showed that part, which on that, I was still just trying to kind of figure out, okay, so did he need the medication or did he not need, did he need the medication or did he need rehab? Like which one was, or was it both? You know, and that's what I was kind of trying to figure out on that part. At any rate, and then it goes to him being, what else? It goes to him being at the, I'm losing my train of thought here. Oh yeah, it goes to the part where there was a girl that said that basically, I have to watch my words here, but he like forced himself on her, you know, and he ended up having to go to trial for that. it showed that. And then one thing I did like about it is it kind of showed like the girl side, like what she was thinking. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect them to kind of show her point of view. So they just had it like you could totally see like her point of view and what she was going through, and then you saw what Mike Tyson, you know, thought about everything. So yeah, that part was good, you know, the way they kind of broke it down. My whole thing is, yeah, the documentary is good, but it's kind of like it's good, but it's kind of hard to know like what really happened. So I will say that if things happen close to the way they're saying it did in here, that was a lot. That was a lot. It's just a lot going on. Like as far as in his life, I felt like there was like no, I was just looking for where was his support system kind of thing, like the real support system. And it seemed like, I know they were kind of showing like his sister was someone who kind of like loved him unconditional, and she was just real with him no matter if he liked it or not. But they kind of portrayed it like everyone else was just kind of like, yes man, like whatever, they're just trying to basically keep him happy so the money keeps coming in kind of thing, but they're not holding him accountable for anything. That's kind of how it was shown in the so far in this series. And I'm caught up on the series. I watch it every week, so I'm caught up, I'm up to date on it, and so far so good. I know there are people who, like I said, didn't feel the best about it, but for me, I like it. I do recommend it. I think it's entertaining, if not anything else. It's definitely entertaining. The portrayal of the people in the film are very, very like deep. So I can see like if they don't feel that this is the way they acted, I can see why people could be like kind of like offended, because it does show a few people not in the best light, you know. So the way they kind of like went there with the portrayal of people, that's something else that, yeah, they didn't, I don't feel like they really sugarcoated anything. I kind of just feel like they just said what, you know, what it was kind of thing. So at any rate, I'm going to wrap this video up. I just want to say that I thought it was a good series. I think it's a good series. It's still on. The final show hasn't aired yet, but so far I think it's good. I really enjoyed it. Check it out. It's called Mike, and it's on Hulu, and it's streaming now. All right, guys. Until next time, don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe. Peace.